In public media.
USF Safety Florida, committed to reducing work-related illnesses, injuries, and workers' comp premiums while avoiding OSHA penalties and helping employers profit from safety. More information is available by visiting usfsafetyflorida.com. The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, Super League enthusiasm for local soccer. We talk about the impact of the first professional Major League women's sports franchise to land in Jacks. And heat as art. We explore Mocha's new atrium installation, which transforms thermodynamics into a visual form. And they were Jacksonville's earliest tiny home communities. Author and historian Wayne Wood shares the story of the city's historic Bungalow Courts. Plus, we'll tell you just what the dickens is up in Fernandina Beach this holiday weekend. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at wjct.org or tag us on social.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Israeli military has carried out an extensive bombing campaign in Syria, where the situation remains fluid. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv. Israel says it has destroyed the majority of Syria's advanced weapons.
Over the last several days, the Israeli military says it has struck most of the Syrian military's strategic weapons stockpiles. That includes Israeli strikes on hundreds of targets: Syrian naval vessels, air defense radars, Scud missiles, cruise missiles, fighter jets, helicopters, drones, anti-aircraft batteries, airfields, and dozens of weapons production sites in Damascus and other Syrian cities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the aim is to prevent the weapons from reaching extremist Islamist groups, and he warned Iran not to reestablish itself in Syria. In Cairo, top Israeli security officials held talks to try to advance a ceasefire and hostage exchange deal in Gaza. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
A federal bankruptcy judge has overturned the sale of the media site InfoWars to the satirical news site The Onion. The judge says the auction process was flawed. InfoWars is owned by conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. He's selling it to pay $1.5 billion in damages in a defamation lawsuit to Sandy Hook families. Jones spread lies that the mass school shooting that killed 26 first graders and educators was a hoax. NPR's Tobias Smith has more on the failed auction.
The judge said the Onion offer was just too low. He said money was left on the table, and he blamed the trustee who oversaw the process for using sealed bids instead of a live auction. But families are actually disappointed, especially those who offered to give up some of their proceeds from the sale to help put the Onion's bid over the top. And I'll just add, this is really all the more poignant now, coming as it is just days from the 12th anniversary of the school shooting. It's already the hardest time of year for many of these families.
NPR's Tobias Smith reporting. The man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has been denied bail in Pennsylvania. NPR's Maria Aspen reports a picture of Luigi Mangione is beginning to emerge.
There are still many unanswered questions about how this smart and successful 26-year-old turned into a man who allegedly killed in cold blood. Luigi Mangione grew up in a wealthy Baltimore County family. He was the valedictorian at his exclusive all-boys prep school and went on to earn bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science from the University of Pennsylvania. High school classmate Freddie Leatherberry describes Mangione as athletic, smart, and well-liked.
I'm still just in disbelief that the kid that I knew has just taken his life in this direction.
But in recent years, Mangione was fighting back pain and spending time online, where he expressed admiration for the writing of the Unabomber.
Maria Aspen reporting. This is NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The 25 creations on display at the 22nd Annual Gingerbread Extravaganza in downtown's historic Old St. Andrew's Church are resplendent in icing, candy canes, and lollipops. The Best in Show winner is an exact replica of an antique sewing machine surrounded by little elves making an apron, while the Best Use of Candy award went to a candy cane-topped Candyland. The extravaganza is a fundraiser for the Jacksonville Historic Society, and CEO Alan Bliss says a holiday tradition.
We could not stop doing this now if we wanted to. People who came here as little children with their parents are now coming as adult parents with their own little children. It has become a Jacksonville tradition for residents and visitors, and it's just become one of those beloved things that's distinctive to Jacksonville.
The show at the church on A. Philip Randolph Boulevard opened last Friday and closes Saturday, December 28th. Hours vary by day, so check the show calendar at jackshistory.org. With temperatures expected to drop below 40 degrees overnight tonight, City Rescue Mission is opening its cold weather shelter for people in need. The nonprofit says starting at 6 this evening, individuals will be able to check in at the State Street campus. City Rescue Mission says the overnight cold weather shelters will remain open as long as the temperatures stay below 40 degrees. Rain in the forecast today here in Northeast Florida and will gradually cool off through the afternoon.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, celebrating the hard work, commitment, and achievements of the 1 in 5 college students who are parents. More at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, North Florida soccer spirit reaches a fever pitch. We talked to 2 supporters and super fans ahead of the Sporting Jacks season to come. Later in the program, a new exhibit in downtown Jacksonville pushes the line between invasive technology and artistic expression. But first, some Super League enthusiasm for the city's first pro sports franchise for women. To discuss it, we're joined by Tony Allegretti, Chief Community Officer of the Sporting Club Jacksonville and pal of WJCT. Hey, Tony, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Ian.
We're also joined by Zara Siassi. Am I getting that right?
Zara Siassi.
Zara Siassi. And I already said it 4 times today. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing it. Zara Siassi, United Soccer Coaches All-American and former defensive midfielder with the University of North Florida. Zara, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
First of all, we should say congratulations because this All-American designation was just announced. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us about it. What does it mean to be chosen by the United Soccer Coaches as an All-American?
It was honestly surreal. It still feels surreal to me, and it was a great honor. I'm very blessed to be able to represent the university that has poured a lot into me, and I've poured a lot into it. So it feels really good to have that recognition after being here my entire college career, and to be one of the 6 mid-major schools out of 48 women represented in the All-American status. It feels really good. I think it's rare to have a mid-major on there. So
yeah, and so you basically play kind of a midfield defending position.
I play center back.
Center back, okay.
Yeah, mainly defensive.
And you've basically started pretty much every game of your college career. Is that right?
Yes.
So tell us how many minutes of playtime you've had.
A little over 7,000, I think.
And that's a program record at the school.
Yes.
And that's an enormous amount, right, Tony?
It's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, Tony, this is the first expansion league in the USL Super League in Jacksonville, which just started up last year. First of all, how did that happen? Like, what was the process? How did Jacksonville make the case for a team here?
Yeah, so you'd have to rewind. Jacksonville hasn't had professional soccer in many years, like almost a decade, and we're the largest city in the United States that doesn't have a pro team at all. And we originally started speaking with the USL after the NASL folded, and had a really good rapport. They coveted Jacksonville as a market. It looked good. If you look at like just sort of USL franchises across the country, they're kind of in challenger cities, smaller cities, especially in League One and then up into the championship on the men's side. We were alerted early on that they were going to stand up a women's league, a pro women's league, and we were very interested in that. And so when we negotiated our franchise, we wanted a women's team in there, and from the very beginning, we knew that we wanted to start with the women's team because of that lack of sports for women in Jacksonville. And this was kind of before, this has been a couple of years now that we've been working on this. This was before sort of this surge of women's sports. I mean, women's sports has always been great. I grew up with my mom and my sister, and my mom coached, and my sister played Division I, and I've always had women's sports in my lens. But this is something that we knew the community would love, and that's why we're starting in August.
And you're saying we a lot there, so
Sorry.
remind us kind of who this is and who the partners are.
Sure. Yeah. So our organization is lead invested by a guy named Ricky Kaplan. He made a lot of money in health tech, and he has a family office with a ton, like probably 20 something businesses. We're a big one of those, and there's a lot of other partners, investors. Tim Tebow's sort of famous investor, as well as Fred Taylor. And then Steve Livingston and I really brought the concept to Ricky and the investors some time ago, and so we're partners in it as well, and operators, and really have just been working on it. It takes forever. It's a long process. Pro sports is no joke. It's a lot of work. We have started really with Steve and I and Mauricio, who's our technical guy on the football side. We now have more technical people coming in because we have to make a team. So it was really just us for a while. Now there's 14 of us, and we've actually got 2 offices, and we're working really hard to get this thing ready for August.
And so the big announcement just recently was the fact that these games are going to be played at Hodges Stadium at UNF. And that's at least for the first year. But there are plans to eventually build a stadium. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, our plans.
So where's that going to be?
Yeah, I wish I could say.
Come on, man.
I know. I knew you'd put the screws to me on that. We're really in quiet mode on that. We are. I think everyone is weary of announcements that are just announcing an announcement, and so we want all of that to be really defined and settled, and all our relationships with like the city and our investors, and the sellers, and it's a lot of acquisition that needs to transpire before we start talking about where it is. But it's in Duval County, and it's coming.
Okay. And ultimately about 15,000 seats?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so 15,000, 12,000 seats. So there'll be some safe standing, as you see in a lot of soccer-specific stadiums. So, and that also, it'll be horseshoe shaped so that we can add seats later if we like, or if there's some match that really demands a bigger crowd. We can also do multi-sport, so we can do lacrosse, rugby. We can do concerts, like 2-day festivals, something like that. Can get as many as 20,000 people.
And that's part of the vision as well. Like,
That's
as
right.
you're fleshing this out, is that you probably would try to do some festivals, you would try to do some tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all. Yeah, all this is sort of in the planning spot, and that's just inside the stadium. So we also have a mix of uses around the stadium, a whole almost community development that we've been working on.
And is it new that it's going to for sure be in Duval? I know that there was initially some discussion that it might be in northern or northwest St. Johns County.
Sort of new. I think we've been socializing that some, maybe not breaking news, but definitely have been working with the administration here and some of the city council leadership. But no, we decided some time ago that we liked Jacksonville as the spot.
I want to ask, just in terms of being a soccer player, what difference it might have made to you if there had been a professional league at the time that you were first starting your career at UNF?
I don't know if it necessarily would have changed anything. I think it just would have, again, made that vision a little bit closer to home, because when you're playing and you have a team that's right next to you in your backyard, it makes it might light a fire under you a little bit more to know that you have that opportunity. And I think that's what this team is all about. It's about opportunity, and the expansion of the league is all about the opportunities.
And You've heard, I guess, that there's even some rumblings when recruiters, college recruiters, are talking to students who might be interested in a local school, that having a league here could impact that recruiting process. Talk a little bit about what you've heard.
I think across the country where different franchises are for the USL, I think girls know that it's expanding and that the goal of the league is to just give as many opportunities as possible for college athletes that may not have had that opportunity otherwise. So for college coaches, it's going to be a good recruiting tool for them to say, hey, we have this team that's really close by. And it's even cooler if they can say, well, we had a player that played here and now they play there. And once they can start building that up, I think that's a big recruiting tool they can use.
And so, can we ask you about whether or when or what you might be doing in terms of your involvement with this league?
I think for me, my goal is to play professionally. So I'm just going to seek out whatever opportunities are going to be there. And I've always been very ambitious and driven. So I'm just excited to see what the journey is. And I know that no two player journeys are the same.
So, for people who watch women's college soccer, professional women's soccer, I mean, how do you characterize the difference between being a professional player as a woman as opposed to being a college player? What's the difference?
I think it just increases in demand and your discipline and drive to do it. So you have when you grow up playing travel soccer, it's okay, mom and dad drive you, you kind of just go depending on the type of player you are. So the club sphere is not too demanding. It's as demanding as you want it to be. And then once you get to college, it's a step up and it's like, okay, you go to school and you're an athlete and that's your life.
That's it.
And then once you become a professional, it's that the demand of school isn't as much there anymore. So now this is your job. You're getting paid for it. So I think the demand is really what changes and the demand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And how do you prepare for that mentally? Obviously, you've been doing, an extraordinary high level of fitness, throughout your life. I mean, you're a great athlete, but is the mental component something that you have to prepare for changing if you're moving into the professional sphere?
Definitely. I think even every year in college, I've worked on that part of my game. So I would say the mental part is just as important as the physical part. I know it sounds cliche, but it's really true.
So how do you hone your mental acuity and your abilities?
I think seeking the support of the people around you and seeking external support if that's something that you're interested in and feel that you need. I think those things are very underrated, but they're very helpful. And I think the individual part is for me, I'm um, very big in my faith and that keeps me grounded. So I think that's been a huge part of what's helped me to be able to keep that mental space clear and also doing things, having a pre-game routine or pre-practice routine, keeping things consistent so that you're always getting into that mode of priming your body to know that you have to go and perform and do something.
Well, if you're just joining us, we are talking about Sporting Club Jacksonville. It's the city's first pro sports franchise for women. You can join the conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at wjct.org or reach out on social media. We have a call from Barry in Mandarin. Good morning, Barry.
Good morning. How are you?
Terrific. Go ahead.
Yes, I am just so excited about this. Both my kids played at Episcopal, and now my grandkids are both playing soccer. My question is, do we have any plans to improve the soccer facilities in the Northeast Florida area? They are really pretty bad for the most part, and very few. There are so many kids involved in this, and you go to other areas like down in Orlando, and the fields are gorgeous and in great shape. So that's my question, because I know this is trickling down to the kids, and it's just an awesome thing for Jacksonville.
Great. Yes. So this is Tony. We are definitely working on training facilities and facilities for our youth. We have just merged an acquisition sort of, but it's nonprofit, so it's like a combination with Florida Elite, which is a huge youth program here. We do aim to create more rectangles all over in spaces.
Rectangles being like practice
Fields,
spaces.
yeah, fields, yes. And so we've got more news on that upcoming, but there is a massive, like Barry said, there's a massive demand and supply issue, and more kids just don't have access. And so that's another thing that we're looking at is parts of our area that don't have fields at all. And there's some great student athletes there that just don't have a sniff at soccer, and we want to make sure that everybody gets a sporting chance at that.
Perhaps it was the training facility and those fields that I'm thinking of
In
that
St.
were
John's?
maybe more of a St. John's County.
Yeah, and so we are working with St. John's. We've actually talked extensively with them and Clay County, and some other spots in Duval where we can potentially put some training facilities in there and public access. Like, so it's one thing, for us to have something for our teams, but those will be really more private. We are very much interested in helping create opportunities for all the kids.
Yeah. And Tony, for people who aren't familiar with you, I mean, you've been an innovator on a lot of different levels in Jacksonville. You were behind a couple of really big restaurants downtown, Uptown Grill and Burrito Gallery. You were a big part of the first Wednesday Art Walk and the Riverside Arts Market. You've worked for the Chamber. I actually was stalking your LinkedIn page, and I thought this was a great quote from just your work as a consultant. You said, "If your stomach is the community and your company is a bratwurst, I'm the boiling pot of old style beer on the grill," which speaks to a certain, because I went to school in Wisconsin. I kind of
clean up my LinkedIn.
I really understand. Yeah, you got to do a little hygiene there. But anyway,
I am an old style man for sure.
Yeah, and it's tough to find these days, even at a.
You got to go to there's a place in Savannah actually that has it. That's the closest. So
be more specific. I've got a few fans
it's a
in
sports
my family.
bar. It's like Mick. I'll send you the link. But if you go on Old Style,
we'll post it on our website later.
So if you go on, there's a beer finder, and that's the closest one.
All right.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
sorry, we digress.
We digress. You've been a part of, though, a lot of foundational developments that have really moved the city forward. I'm curious where you think this ranks out of those other things you've been involved with.
Well, I think it can have the most impact for sure. Like, I mean, Art Walk is still going. One of the best things about all those things that you mentioned earlier, especially the restaurants and the placemaking type stuff, is that really capable people are running it now. So it looks amazing on my LinkedIn. But really, it was just an idea that I helped get going, and now it's a going concern. And now, I mean, the economic impact of Art Walk has got to be tens of millions, over time. I feel the same way about this club. There's so much benefit and so many good outcomes that come from team sports that if we can grow that, and we already know that there's high level. Carson Pickett's from our area. She just won the national title with NWSL. We know that we have the athletes, the student athletes that can go on and do great things, and giving them an opportunity to play here in their hometown is massive. And then just bringing the community together. So when eventually we do have our stadium and our place, we'll have a sea of parking, and what better sort of canvas for our community, I think culturally, than have a place where people can gather. And I'm super excited about doing things around that as well. So it's soccer, but it's also just like a community hub that we want to be a part of.
Zara, what are you hearing from your friends, your colleagues? How did you first learn about the arrival of this league in Jacksonville, and what was the general reaction?
I think we learned about it last summer when they initially announced that they were bringing the league, an expansion team, to Jacksonville. So actually 2 of my teammates and I went to, I believe it was the release at the Wells Fargo Tower. And I remember we walked away and we were like, wow, that's really cool. And we know that it's just starting, so we didn't really know. Nobody knew the timeline or really what it would look like. And I think over the past year, just hearing more news every couple months about it, and then obviously having the press conference at UNF stating that the games are going to be played at Hodges Stadium and that it's starting up in August, I think makes it very real for all those involved in the organization and for us players to know that the league is expanding. So it's very exciting, and again, like we've both said, it's just more opportunity for more players who want to live out their dream of playing professionally who may not have had those opportunities prior.
And Tony kind of alluded to this just in terms of it being a really extraordinary time for women athletes. This was a record year for women's sports in a lot of ways. The WNBA had record audiences, got a new media deal. The March Madness women's tournament outdrew the men's. And the National Women's Soccer League attendance surpassed 2 million for the first time. So it really has been kind of a boom time. What does it feel like just to be in women's sport at this time? How do you feel like it's different for you personally to be seeing this surge of interest and, financial backing and audience and all of that?
I think it's really cool. I know that all of the older veteran players, like national team players and players that have been playing professionally for a while, I think it's very rewarding, especially for them to see that the work that they've done and the things that they've tried to push are finally paying off. And to have more coverage of women's sports, that's huge. I mean, for me, I love watching women's sports, and I know a limitation in the past has been, well, where do I watch it? What TV package do I need? What subscription do I have to get? So now that it's becoming more accessible, and it gives people an excuse to turn it on and they're going to watch it because they have access to it. So I think it's very exciting to know that more investment is being made in women's sports because they see the joy and they see the passion and they see that people do watch it.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I was just going to jump into every match of the Super League is on Peacock, which is obviously on every Soccer Nuts app. So they've done a really good job, I think, from the media side and making sure the awareness and the access to the game. Growing up, I didn't really have soccer to watch when I was a kid.
I mean, what is the financial component of that when it comes to TV stuff? Like, where does the league fit into that world?
Well, it's brand new, so I don't know. You mean in terms of like what's the media deal?
Will there be one? Is that something that would even be in the offing?
Yeah. So no, they definitely have a deal with Peacock. So NBC pays them. They also on the men's side, it's multiple. It's ESPN, CBS, and the third TUDN. So the Spanish network. So they have broadcast deals all over. So those deals are through the league, and there is some trickle to us, and we will always have local coverage too. So we've got I think we're on ABC and NBC. We've got a little 30-minute show right now, but when our women's team starts playing, you'll be able to watch it locally, home and away, as well as Peacock.
Well, Tony Allegretti, Zara Siassi, thank you so much for being here today. It's great news that the league is coming and it's got a real plan. So
I'd feel remiss. I'd feel not like old style if I didn't say you can get season tickets now at sportingjacks.com. We really want to see. I've seen Zara play at Hodges in front of like 6,000 people. So we know people are going to show up. So please check us out.
And you're selling tickets, regular tickets, but also
regular tickets, season tickets right now. See, you can get season tickets for less than one ticket to another sports game.
No names mentioned.
No names.
But you also have like a VIP package, right?
Oh yeah, we've got really in the VIP is like, I mean, I think some of our aside from sponsor boxes kind of things, I think our biggest is like $35 a match.
Yeah,
we go down to like $10.
Well, I look forward to hearing more about it, sharing an old style at some point. Tony, thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Awesome.
Thank you so
much. Thanks, Ian.
All right, up next, art that forces intimacy through technology. We talk to the creator of a new local exhibit about making art from surveillance. Welcome back. Well, from your breath to your face to your heartbeat, Rafael Lozano Hemmer turns the most intimate identifiers into art. We're joined now by the artist here to tell us about his work, including his new exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Jacksonville. Rafael, thanks so much for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
So this is part of the museum's Project Atrium series, which is staged in sort of a large vertical space right at the entrance to the museum. Talk about how you created something specific for that space.
Well, first of all, I came, I visited, I talked to the curators and understood what had happened there before. When I came, I saw a massive sculpture by one of my heroes, Frank Stella. And I thought, okay, this is very intimidating to come right after Frank Stella, especially in an artwork which was probably the last one he ever made while he was still alive. And it was a beautiful, glorious sculpture. But what I decided to do is to go the other way, is instead of creating a big object, I created more, let's call it an interactive installation, something that's immersive, something that invites the public to be in the space and be surrounded by light, surrounded by graphics and sound.
And so your piece actually incorporates body heat, ambient temperature. Talk about just the technology and how it's translated into a visual.
For sure. The experience is called spectral subjects, and it's basically these thermographic cameras. They're basically cameras that don't look at light, they look at heat. And so they're actually painting a picture with the turbulence of air coming from AC, from our human bodies, or from objects in the room. And what you see is an alternative view of the dynamics of the space. And it's kind of interesting because this kind of art that I make is art that is participatory. It depends on people to exist. So you're an integral part of the experience. As you traverse the atrium, excuse me, as you traverse the atrium, these cameras capture your presence and then show you as some kind of signature, or as a trace on a never repeating animation that takes place on 3 walls. So projected colossally around you is images of yourself, images of those people who have been there before you, and also how the heat that is generated by all of these bodies accumulates and dissipates.
And so much of your artwork depends on gathering something from the viewer and repurposing it as art. And I want to talk about some of the specific things that you've done, which are so interesting. But how do you know as an artist that you can kind of depend on your audience to produce something that is satisfying to you?
To an extent, that's part of the humbling part of being an artist that allows for interactivity, right? Because it depends on what people give. That's what you're going to get. The artwork feels you, the artwork remembers you. I'll give you an example. I had made one of the projects that I've been making for the past 20 years is a sensor that measures your heartbeat and then represents this heartbeat in a little flickering light bulb. Only we have 3,000 of these light bulbs. And so as you traverse this exhibition space, you're surrounded by the 3,000 heartbeats that are beaming the vital signs of the past 3,000 participants. The reason I am sure people will participate is because of that responsibility, that if they don't, those light bulbs are off, that there is nothing to see. So there is a relationship of authorship that gets shared with the public, and I think that people love that responsibility, actually. And we live in a society of spectacle and selfies and reality TV. People are very comfortable sort of playing a part in one of these pieces because they see themselves, they're creating something with their participation, and I think that more and more we need those experiences where the public feels like they are the key to the artwork.
One of the projects that you did involved this array of microphones where you were recording voices and that speaking into these microphones, which could capture hundreds of thousands of recordings each. Then they're also playing back voices from the past. Explain how that worked and kind of what you got out of that.
Yeah, so imagine you walk into a room, there's 10 microphones at different heights. They're big, Shure microphones, the vintage ones. You speak into them. And what we did is we took away the microphone from the inside and we replaced it with a tiny microphone, a loudspeaker, and a computer. So the microphone listens to you, but it also records you and then plays back a recording from any of 600,000 recordings from the past. So as you speak, it speaks back to you. And we're not used to putting our ear to a microphone to hear a voice, an echo from the past. But it's quite fun because, for example, I have one of these microphones at my house. When we first did it, my mom was still alive and she said a bunch of stuff. And then sometimes I speak into the microphone, she answers back. It sends me straight to psychotherapy. But the spirit is that the artwork keeps growing because my kids speak into it or different visitors speak into it. And then the content of the work, what is the echo of it, is whatever was put inside.
And so, very often, your artwork creates a community of the people who are viewing it
That's right.
together. It requires their participation, but then it also turns them universally into this piece of art. Why is it important to you to create those kind of connections among people who are just in a gallery
Yeah.
randomly?
I think that the highest calling of art is to create experiences to be shared, to have people come together. We live in extremely solitary times, and especially after COVID, we had the sense of social distance and of disconnection. Politically, I think that there's a lot of division going around, and the art's job is to create a platform for people to feel comfortable and to create community. So, how can we use these technologies that oftentimes are there to either track us or survey us to create experiences that are connective, to create a shared experience that we all can enjoy.
And I'm not sure if the exhibit was called Trackers that you did, but it was very surveillance dependent.
Yeah.
And it often, like, we would measure the distance between people. It would let them know relationally how long they were next to each other. And it's fascinating to watch a group of people in the room looking around at all of these surveillance images of themselves and the data that is derived from those images. But it also calls to mind, obviously, the ways that surveillance can be used and even is used in some authoritarian countries right now. I think of China, where there's just an enormous amount of facial recognition technology and tracking that's of everyday citizens.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my work is always straddling that border between the seduction of participation and inclusion and you're the artwork, but also the sinister, almost Orwellian, predatory technologies that are quite quotidian and that, in a way, these artworks allow you to make them evident, to sort of help you have that debate, to talk about the state in which machines can track us. And of course, you mentioned China, which is fair, but it happens to all of us, right? Our phones are tracking us. We have an Amazon Alexa in our home, and it has 7 microphones that are listening to everything we're saying. So this is very commonplace now. And I do this not as a moralist statement saying, well, surveillance is wrong. I mean, surveillance is inevitable. But I do think that there are ways in which we can pervert the ways these technologies were originally designed, which is to count us, to have these metrics, to make us be part of a society that is really determined by these statistics, and instead create something that is poetic or absurd or critical. I think that that's the job of the artist, is to take those technologies and don't make them about those sinister or more sinister uses. At the same time, I have a feeling that there is a way to understand an artwork, which is this. We used to think that you'd go to a museum to see a sculpture and be inspired by it, or a painting, right? Now it is the artwork that senses you. It is the artwork that listens and sees you. And it is the artwork that is expecting for you to do something interesting with it. So it's very theatrical. When people come to MoCA, what they'll see is a colossal projection. They'll see that it never repeats itself. They'll see that there's a dramaturgy. In other words, it takes over time, it changes. And so the artwork is an invitation to be there with others and to discuss, well, what is the role of these technologies, but also how can we, form a community.
You are a Mexican Canadian artist, and you have done some work recently that was profiled in a PBS series called Borderlands.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the project that is down in kind of the border towns of El Paso and Juarez.
Yeah, so in 2019, over the course of about 3 weeks, we put 3 interactive stations in El Paso and 3 interactive stations in Mexico. They were all identical. They're basically a microphone, a loudspeaker, and a little dial or tuning wheel that you could turn. And as you did, very, very powerful robotic searchlights would penetrate the airspace of the other country like a massive bridge of light over the border. And as my lights and your lights intersected in midair, we would open a bidirectional channel of communication so that you could hear me and I could hear you. And if I didn't like what you were saying, I would just tune you out and look for somebody else because there were 6 stations in total. Over the course of these 3 weeks, every night, tens of thousands of people from El Paso and Juarez would come together at the border to speak to each other through these bridges of light. It was very emotional because there's a lot of family members on the other side who had not seen each other for a while. But there was also everything from serenades to a lot of flirting to manifestos. And it was lovely to see how people in the area were using this artwork to represent a voice that is normally not heard. When we hear about the border, we always hear about different types of violence or problems. And yet, in this particular thing, the citizens came out to take over the border as a place to be united. So it was one of the best projects I've done, not because of what I did, but the way in which people used the technology and used the artwork to communicate to each other.
I thought it was interesting too that you said, the wall, kind of the border is this dominant narrative that we always hear. But when you're down there in those communities, that they're sick of focusing on the division. They're sick of focusing on the wall or the border, that they really are much more focused on the fact that these are really sister communities with enormous interaction between the families on each side. The populations have a lot of connections that cross that border.
That's exactly right. And so my job wasn't so much to make new bridges between the two sister cities, but to highlight the fact that those bridges already exist. They should have a shared history. There are fraternal connections, environmental, definitely economic relationships. So there is a disconnect between this idea of division and separation, and then the reality of El Paso and Juarez, which was a city actually 100 years before the U.S. actually existed. There was already the city there. So I have a feeling that one of the reasons why this project was successful is because the people see it as natural to have that connection. And they wanted to, at least for a while, forget about the border and be able to talk about what is shared. What is that humane sort of connection that we all have?
It is surprising too. I mean, in the documentary, they show this. You kind of visit this aerial lookout point where you can see the vast expanse of these two adjacent cities. And were you surprised at just how much cross connection, how much they look like a single city divided by a highway?
Yeah, I mean, to the degree that the people that took me around, I took the opportunity to meet hundreds of artists who participated in the project. And one of the things that they were saying to me the most is, we don't really need artists such as yourself, with privileges coming here to tell us like a land UFO, about this work. What we really want is to be listened to. And so Border Tuner is about listening. It's like, how can we create this tuning devices where we can make these two realities, listen to each other? And that's, I think, the strength of art.
Your creative process is really different. I mean, I've seen you say you don't stand at a canvas waiting for inspiration, that you like to describe the workspace, your studio, is more of a factory or a laboratory. Explain kind of how you come up with these projects.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am actually a scientist. I originally studied chemistry in university. My parents were nightclub owners in Mexico, so I had to rebel some way. That's my way. I became a scientist. But then after a while, I decided to be an artist. I was a programmer, and I started working with other people. So always in collaboration and always with an experimental desire, right? Like there's the sense of the unknown, which I think is something that both science and art have, right? We all throw ourselves into trying something new. We don't know if it's going to work or not, but that's part of the joy of investigating and doing research. So the artworks are usually big collaborations. For example, the one we have here at MoCA is done by at least 12, 15 people, between programmers and producers and curators who have put together all of this work. So this idea of the artist as a solitary genius who is in front of their canvas, I know that there are some out there, but I'm certainly not one of them. I'm more like a theater director where I get to conduct really talented people to come through in a project like Spectral Subjects.
You've described it as somewhere more of a relationship as like an architect.
Or more performing arts. I think it's more like theater, because if you think about it, these artworks are alive. They are always changing. They're irrepeatable. When you walk into the atrium, you're seeing something that will never be seen again. It's almost like a mirror or something that captures the ephemeral nature of existence, because the the normal thing that we think about museums is that they give us unchanging references throughout history, right? Like you will all go see the same painting and then have this shared point. But what if the artwork itself is the one that is evolving and changing over time? I think that invites us to share that more theatrical moment of, oh, this is just happening right now. It's live and it'll disappear. And that's both joyful and mournful because at the end, when these artworks record you, you will also be erased from the content. And that erasure, it's also a memento mori. It's this moment of reflection on the fact that we're only here on Earth for a little time and we have to make the best use of it.
One of the exhibits that I thought was very interesting that you have called 33 questions per minute. Explain for people who don't know it
Okay.
what it entails.
So that piece is now 25 years old. It was originally for the Havana Biennial, and it was AI. It was a very early version of artificial intelligence. It's basically a piece of software that takes all the words from the dictionary, and it knows how to conjugate verbs, and it has grammatical rules. But it has the following rules. There's an algorithm that says pick words at random from the dictionary. Number 2, form a grammatically correct question. And usually they're silly. There's things like, will you bleed in an orderly fashion? Like a very strange combination, but grammatically correct. And then third, don't ever repeat the same question. So it'll take 55 billion years for the artwork to actually go through all of the combinations of questions. And it presents them in this little detonator style screens that make a little beep. And they're presented 33 times per second. So it's kind of frustrating to try and read it.
What's the significance of the 33 per second?
It's the threshold of human legibility. So it's enough time to read the question, but by the time that you're actually trying to answer it, already the next question is there. So it's right, it's a little bit of a piece about that kind of data density. We're all just, bombed with information from all sides. So that piece does that. I should mention that that's the very, very, very first piece that was acquired by a big museum. It was acquired by MoMA in New York City. And that really helped because all of a sudden other museums felt like this kind of material, this kind of electronic art or media art could be collected. So 33 questions per minute was a very early exploration into AI. It's kind of like a linguistic poem. It's never ending. I think of it almost like a fountain. It's just constantly coming up with like really strange combinations of words.
But some are very profound too.
Some are very profound. And politically, I should mention this project was done at a time when Cubans could not have access to the internet, but myself, as a Mexican Canadian, I could actually have access to the internet. So I connected the artwork to the internet and invited Cubans to enter any question that they wanted. And the question was presented in the flow of automated questions in such a way that the authorities could not determine if this question was asked by a person or by a computer. So like a reverse Turing test. And I love that because I think that Cubans really wanted to have access to the internet. They wanted to speak their mind, but the government censorship and all sorts of different political reasons, they could not do it. So through this work, they could send messages out into the internet and the authorities could not censor them.
That's fascinating. So this upcoming exhibit, it is at, we said, MoCA Jacksonville. It runs from December 13th to June 1st, but the celebration for the opening is the 12th, which is tomorrow. More information is available at mocajacksonville.unf.edu. But you're also doing an event just personally at the museum on the following Saturday?
I think that there's a whole bunch of different events. I am going to come back more in the spring to do an event myself. I do know that MoCA and in general the University of North Florida is paying close attention to the programming around the show. To be honest, I've been so submerged in programming these days that I haven't kept up with what's happening. For me, it's all the openings tomorrow. You gotta deliver.
Well, it's a great opportunity to meet a really extraordinary artist, and we're so happy to have you here, Rafael Lozano-Hemmer. Thanks so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.
Congaree & Penn, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpenn.com. Life South Community Blood Centers, providing blood and patient services to the local hospitals, serving patients in this community. Donating blood with Life South helps save lives. More at lifesouth.org to find a blood drive near you. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
Sohrab Ahmari is proudly conservative. He's written for the Catholic Herald, the New York Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Sounds like he'd be a champion of unfettered capitalism, right? Wrong.
Capitalism is actually a profoundly unconservative voice. It's, tremendously creative, but also tremendously destructive.
Sohrab Ahmari joins us on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
Did you know that less than half of American households give to charity? You can do better than that. Give to this station today. Thanks.
Please call 353-9528 or visit us at wjct.org/radio.
Raw milk is in the news. Possible bird flu contamination has been detected in batches of unpasteurized milk in California, and the USDA has ordered testing of the nation's milk supply related to concerns about the virus. Why are people drinking raw milk, and what are the health risks that come with it? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, you might be wondering just what in the dickens is up in Fernandina Beach this holiday weekend, but here to tell us about the 10th annual Victorian-inspired celebration is Madison Josa with the Amelia Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. So this is Dickens on Center. It's an annual celebration. This is the 10th year.
This is the 10th year.
So the concept is kind of built around like A Christmas Carol, that era of Victorian England.
Correct. And it was inspired by our ties to the British flag, which we were under for 20 years. And so we thought, what better way to celebrate the holidays by turning downtown Fernandina Beach into a Victorian village to pay homage to Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol.
You've got 8 flags to choose from, right? I mean, this is a place that was occupied and taken and
back and forth.
Back and forth.
For a long time.
But I mean, to be honest, let's talk. A Christmas Carol, maybe not the jolliest of times portrayed, right? You're talking about bitter cold, sick and dying kids, miserly bosses. How does that become an appealing event for a city to embrace and embody?
So because of the, historic and quaint charm of our downtown, it is the perfect setting with the cobblestone vibe and the old buildings. And so we really take the best parts of it in terms of everyone is in their Victorian garb, from the corsets and the bonnets, and everyone is dressed up. You can hear horses, clacking on the streets. We really get into character. And so we romanticize it a little bit.
Yeah. But the weather, I guess, usually complies. And so in addition to the costumes, this is also a huge shopping thing, right? There's a giant Christmas market that happens. So who all are vendors? Is that mostly just people who are in the downtown area of Center Street, or does it spread out into the rest of the city?
Yeah, this is our footprint is downtown. It covers about a few streets of that area. And this year we're welcoming 113 vendors.
Wow.
So all sorts of shopping, from ornaments to handmade candles and jewelry. And there's something for every kind of shopper. And we're really excited. A lot of vendors come back year over year.
So you can knock out some serious shopping, though, at this
Serious
thing.
Christmas shopping to be had.
Okay. So this is a small area of downtown. And for newcomers who are coming to this event for the first time, what's your advice on parking, getting there, whether they should be trying to find a place to stay? I mean, it is a busy small town.
It is a very busy small town. So we do have a trolley that runs throughout the festival that picks people up across from our Central Park. It's free. It's the Dickens Express. That is the best way to get back and forth without having to park. Obviously, there's parking to be had. There is 50 blocks of downtown to take advantage of, while the footprint is really in the main Center Street drag.
And then there's a bunch of different zones that are named after various fictional characters in the world of Charles Dickens.
We've got Oliver's Alley. We've got Cratchit's Corner. We've got Tiny Tim's Kid Zone, which is all photos with Saint Nick, activities for kids. There's a movie theater. So we've got a lot for people to enjoy, entertainment on multiple stages.
Are the photos with Saint Nick, as I remember them from childhood, where you just kind of stand in an endless line, or is there a way to kind of register?
You can pre-register online. So if you go to AmeliaIsland.com/Dickens, there is a tile where you can go in and register, and you go and join Saint Nick in his workshop for your window.
There are also some other events around this. Am I right in thinking that there is like a fun run and then a pet parade?
There is. So we've got Run Like the Dickens, and that is on Saturday morning at Main Beach, where you can run the fun run, and the Parade of Paws is my favorite, where animals and their owners get dressed up and they parade down Center Street, and there's awards for best dress, best theme, and people go all out.
And also for most resemblance between owner and pet. Is that one? So do you participate in this stuff yourself?
I do.
Yeah. The parade is that's like the pet parade, but there's I guess a illuminated parade of some kind. What's the deal with that?
Yes. So tomorrow the festivities kick off, which is the illuminated procession that's downtown from 5 to 7. And we welcome everyone to bring their favorite lanterns and glow lights. We also provide them at the entrance, and we take a procession around downtown, and then we have the finale.
Now these are lights that are not necessarily on fire, right?
Not on fire.
Okay.
We like to keep it a little safer
operated.
there. Yes.
Okay.
And then we have the finale over the harbor, which is our drone show that we have on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evening.
What is the deal with this drone show? That is it's this kind of extraordinary combination of lights and technology. What does it look like?
So this is actually our biggest ever. I'm extremely excited about it. This year we've doubled the amount of drones to 500. And it is a 3D display in the sky over the harbor. So it's really a beautiful experience. And it's all, this year I'm really excited. It's island-inspired images. So it's Christmas with a twist. You'll see a lot of those island icons, and kind of iconic landmarks.
Well, it's Dickens on Center. It's this weekend. Starts tomorrow?
Starts tomorrow
All
through
right.
Sunday.
Madison, Joseph, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can send them to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight.
By Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The Cummer Museum of Art and Gardens in Jacksonville curated art from ancient times to the present. Explore galleries, enjoy refreshments and entrees at the cafe, and treasures in the museum shop. More at cummermuseum.org. Volunteers in Medicine has been providing health care for the working uninsured for over 20 years. With over 200 dedicated medical volunteers, Volunteers in Medicine operates clinics in West Jacks and South San Marco. We're committed to a healthier community. More at vimjacks.org. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT